Welcome to episode 2 of the Fair Enough podcast. I'm your host, Luke Sanders. We got Micah Busick and Hayden Mars. You pump fake me on that one. Thanks for making it through this one without sneezing. How we doing today, boys? What's going on?
Oh, doing good.
Good.
Yeah, love to hear. Love to hear it. Today we're going to do some future bets as far as players go. So we're going to be talking about some MVP odds, offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, DPOY, and then we're going to get into we'll splash a little comeback. Odds aren't out on that yet, but just talk to you a little bit about what's going on this season. We're going to get started with a little game. We've kind of introduced something. It's going to be called Fair Enough. We're really creative with our naming. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce some people that we think can win the MVP, and the other two are going to rate it either fair, fair enough, or foul. Fair means that we're really on board with what they're saying. Fair enough means I see where you're coming from, but I don't quite agree. And then foul is just like, man, we are way off base on this one. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll give the first one and I'll give my case. So my first one is Jordan Love. I feel pretty good about this one, honestly. Jordan Love was phenomenal at the end of the year last year. After week 9, which is when you kind of saw a turn from him in the last, 9 weeks there, he had 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and over 2,400 yards in those 10 games. So averaging about 270, 280 yards a game. The splits are a little off on this website, so I can't see exactly, but it's about where he was at. And just really killing it, honestly. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game against Dallas. Looked really good down the stretch there. And their team is really good. And I think that, to win the MVP, your team has to be good. So we all have them projected at 12 wins. I have them winning the division. And I think that if the Packers get to 12 wins and win the division, Jordan Love has to be on an MVP type level. So go ahead and let me know what you guys think. How are we rating this one?
I'm going fair. I like it. I think that he's going to be really good this year, and I think the Packers are going to be good this year. So if they make a run, they get somewhere near 10, 11, 12 wins, I think he'll be right there in the mix. And if he plays like he did at the end of last year, or even like he did in that Dallas game, I think you're right. I think he'll have a good shot at being the MVP.
I'd also have to go fair. I mean, he just he played so well at the end of last year, like you guys said, and he's just got so many young weapons. Like, I mean, they're 4 deep. Their top 4 wide receivers all could have breakout years, any one of them. And if he's playing well, it's going to be hard for him not to be at least in the conversation.
I think one thing Jordan Love definitely has for himself too is the visual test. Everything that he's doing looks really good. It's kind of like Mahomes. Like everyone recognizes how good Mahomes is, just game to game level, play by play. But then he has those special plays that make him look even above that. And Jordan Love has an aspect of that in the arm talent that he has and the creativity he makes in some of his plays.
The only thing that I think could maybe hurt him this year is getting Josh Jacobs, just because Aaron Jones kind of got hurt a little bit in that run that they had. I mean, he came back for the end of it, don't get me wrong. But Josh Jacobs has kind of been a bell cow running back when he was at the Raiders. So, I mean, if they plan to use him like that, Jordan Love may not have to be relied upon as much as he was at the end of the year last year. But I still think, like you said, I think he'll have a good shot.
All right, let's go ahead, Hayden. You give your first part of the game.
Um, the person that I love the best, for good odds, I like Matthew Stafford at plus 2,500. I just feel like, with Puka Nakua, and then now this year, we're hoping Cooper Kupp stays healthy. If he does, then I think he's going to have a really good chance to just throw it all over the yard with those two. They've got a really good running back, and just a really good offense overall. And they made a pretty good run into the playoffs, but I think they'll go even further this year, and I think they'll really challenge for that NFC West title. So I think Matthew Stafford being a Super Bowl champion. I can't remember, does he have an MVP? Because I
No.
don't think he does. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this could be one of those seasons where it kind of helps cement his legacy for maybe becoming a Hall of Famer. He's got the Super Bowl, he's got the stats. If he can just get that MVP and maybe another Super Bowl run, I think he would be a pretty big shoo-in for the Hall of Fame if he isn't already.
Michael, what do you got for the rating on that one?
I'm gonna go fair enough. I just think he's getting old, getting a little bit slower, not as mobile as he used to be. Yeah, he does have some good weapons, especially if Cooper Cup is healthy this year and is prime Cooper Cup like he has been. And Puka Nakua looked amazing last year. But I just think he's older and moving a little slower, and I just don't know if he has quite what it takes to play at an MVP caliber this year.
Yeah, I'm on the fence between fair and fair enough. Honestly, I had the Rams really high. I have them at 12 wins, and for that to happen, Stafford really does have to be at an MVP level. I don't think their defense is going to carry them by any means. So if I'm going to think that they get to 12 wins, I have to think that Stafford's phenomenal. The one thing that usually hurts Sean McVay quarterbacks is running backs get a lot of touchdowns, and those passing touchdowns can be kind of sporadic, and when you get them and when you don't, but I really do love Stafford. I think that he could definitely be there. I'm going to go with fair enough just because of health. I'm actually going to change my answer. I'm going to go with fair enough because I think that out of all these guys, you got to really nitpick because they're all great players. And I think Stafford's probably the least likely to play all of the games this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He did have a pretty healthy year last year, at least. I mean, and I would think through the draft they probably built up that line a little bit more. I can't remember their specific picks, but I'm sure they did. So that's just my only argument for that.
I like it. I like it. Micah, you're up. Give us what you got.
All right, I've got Tua and his odds are 2,500. I, what? What are you
You didn't
laughing
want to say
at?
his last name?
I can't read, okay? Um,
I don't blame you.
but I just think he has too many weapons. And if he stays healthy this year, uh, the way he played last year, towards the start of the year was just he was slinging that ball over the place. I mean, you've got Hill, you got Waddle. They drafted another wide receiver this year. You gained another running back in the backfield that is fast and can catch the ball. I just think he's got so many weapons, and that's going to be an explosive offense. I the issue with him, my biggest concern is probably towards the end of the year. Plays a lot of cold weather games, and it kind of fades. If he kind of fades there towards the end of the year, it kind of just gets forgotten about the beginning of the year. And if you keep arguing the MVP, but I think he could keep it up, and he's just got too many weapons not to succeed this year.
Go ahead, Hayden.
I'm sorry, Mike. I'm gonna have to be the guy, but I'm picking foul. I'm just not that high on Tua because, for one, I think he's going to be. I mean, he had a fairly healthy year last year, but I think that was going to be an outlier. I think with him getting significantly skinnier this offseason, I don't really love that for QBs. I mean, unless you're like Ben Roethlisberger in his 30s, I don't think you need to really be losing a lot of weight as a QB because you're getting hit a lot. But I don't like Tua's arm strength. I didn't really see necessarily where they made significant improvements offensively, but they'll still be good because they have what's his name, John Blank, their head coach.
Tyreek?
But
Oh,
no,
oh, okay.
but
Mike
their head coach,
McDaniel.
yeah, Mike McDaniel. He'll get him into good scenarios, on the offense. But I don't think arm strength wise, and I think in that division he's going to get beat up. And then weather wise, I mean, once we get to mid November and any away game that they have to go to, I don't see him doing very well. So I don't believe in him. Sorry, Micah.
Yeah, also gonna have to go foul on this one as well. You kind of talked about the cold weather games and the late year fallout. Back to these splits here that I love these because I think they paint a full picture. So in weeks 13 and on, two is yards per game. We're at 233 after averaging, over 260 the rest of the year. And then his air yards per attempt were down, a yard and a half from the rest of the season. So I think when it gets cold and everything else, and you really have to spin it to get it through that cold wind and that cold air. He just doesn't have the arm strength to do it. Uh, And I do see the weapons argument. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that's a dream for a QB. But the problem is when it gets late in the year, he doesn't have the arm strength to get it to him. So I think that's where I'm at with Tua. It's just hard because every year it's the same story. It's not like I'm just going off of last year and it's like, oh, he did this last year. And I'm like, okay, basing on 1 year. Pretty much every year of his career, this has been the same thing. He's really good at the beginning, scheme him up. And then at the end of the year, you can't keep doing the same thing. Like you have to have the arm strength or the talent or something to really excel after the defense kind of figures out how to game plan against what you're doing offensively. So I'm just out. I do think the odds are good, and he was very much in the discussion until about like week 12 last year. So I don't hate the numbers, but I just don't see it with Tua.
Yeah, I get that. My big pushback on, so you said the yards per game towards like week 13, wasn't Tyreek dealing with some injuries through that time? So that would put a damper quite a bit on his yards per attempt and all that kind of stuff. I mean, when you lose your one, that drops you down quite a bit. And but I just think he's in a lot better shape this year, and hopefully not.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm against Hayden on that point. I do like that he lost some weight because a lot of people knocked him for being out of shape. I mean, when you're a pro athlete, you're in better shape than every single person that's saying that, but
Not
it is
me.
what it is.
I'm a peak male specimen.
I also think
I,
they're gonna have to win more games than I think they're going to. I mean, like with most of the recent MVPs, I feel like most of them are at least to that divisional round, and I don't even know if I see them making the playoffs. It's gonna be tight.
Yeah, and one thing I hate about MVPs is it's all regular season. So it's basically like Lamar last year, I didn't think had the best stats or was the best quarterback, but his team won, 13 games, and no one else was really on that level. And he
Blew out
played,
the San Francisco 49ers too.
and he played like good. I'm not saying he wasn't great, but I do think there were QBs where you just took their numbers side to side, and you're like, okay, I can make the argument this guy or this guy. But when Lamar has 13 wins and the other QB has 10, it's like, okay, we're just going to give it to the guy with 13 when it's close. So those
Yeah.
wins, I think, is where that kind of plays in. I'll go ahead and go next. I'll pull up my next one, and that is Kirk Cousins. So this one's really low on the odds meter. I think it was plus 4,000 the last time that I looked. Um, just going off last year alone, uh, Kirk Cousins was insane, actually. If you take out his numbers to what he would have had last year, he would have been at about 5,040 if he would have kept doing what he did over the first 8 games. And people were like destroying him, saying, oh, you can't win these games. Kirk was playing at probably the highest level in his career, just absolutely balling out. And I think that if you take it on a full scale view, his weapons this year are at least on par of his weapons last year. So you have obviously Justin Jefferson, who's better than anyone on the Falcons right now. But then you had Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, and this year he'll have Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. So he has a ton of weapons to work with. I think the biggest problem for Kirk is, does Bijan actually get used like CMC? But if you look at last year, Brock Purdy was in the MVP conversation for 14 games until he kind of fell off at the end. But they were using CMC like that too. So that's mine. It's Kirk Cousins.
I'm gonna go fair enough. Um, just because I don't know if I see them team wise. Like I said, I think, and it's unfortunate because I don't think that it should have to become all about wins and where you finish. I just don't know if they're going to have enough wins in that division competing with Tampa Bay. And then also, I don't know how Kirk's going to be off of that Achilles. I mean, I love Kirk. I think he's been playing great ball the last few years, and honestly, since he came from Washington. He's going to be able to put up stats with that well-rounded offense, even missing, Jefferson and Addison. I think he took a step down just a little bit there, wide receivers, like you said. But I mean, with Drake London, I mean, he could be just as good as Addison. He just hasn't had a QB yet to help him. But I think they'll be good. Running game, like you said, will be good. So they're going to have a good chance offensively to just put up some big time numbers. And we'll see, if they take that division by storm like they easily could, because nobody in there is a world beater. As far as we look at him right now, he could win it. So I think just fair enough.
I'm kind of split right now between fair enough and fair. Mostly the odds pull me a little towards that fair. That plus 4,000 are just really good odds, especially for the weapons he has. But it's just hard for me to put money down on somebody who is coming off a pretty tough injury halfway through the season of last year. Is he going to still have some lingering stuff to start the year and have a really slow start that just kind of keeps him out of the conversation in general? Um, if it would have been maybe a little earlier in the year, I might think otherwise. But with him being a pocket quarterback, he's not really mobile as is, so it's not really going to hurt him there. But I just think that injury might hold him back a little bit this year and take him a bit to get going. And so I'm gonna have to go fair enough, just because of that injury, honestly.
Yeah, I definitely see the injury point. I was gonna, say what Micah said basically right there is the dude doesn't move. Like literally, if the play doesn't go perfectly, he's throwing it away or he's taking a sack. So I don't know how much the Achilles affects his play style. Now, if it's pain or something like that, obviously that's going to be an issue. And then for the wins thing, I meant to mention that I have them at 12 wins. I have them at 13 wins, somewhere right in there. So we don't see the Falcons in the same way. I think if you see the Falcons at 10 wins like you do, I would not be betting it. But if you think they're more that 12, 13 range like I am, it's just going to be hard to. The MVP is a narrative award more than it is like an actual how good are you compared to everyone else? Or Mahomes would win it every year. Like realistically, Mahomes would just keep winning. It's like in the NBA where LeBron should have been the MVP for 10 years straight, but he wasn't because they wanted to make a narrative. And so I think if the Falcons come from last year what they had at QB and if they go to 13 wins, it's just going to be a higher chance that they're like, all right, we got to give this to Kirk because like that team improves so much.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right, Hayden, why don't you go ahead with your second one?
My second one is Anthony Richardson at plus 3,000. I really like those odds. Coming off that injury, I think as long as he can stay healthy, and I think he will learn from last year, he's going to have to, stay away from the big hit. I mean, he can run, and that's going to be part of why I think he might win the MVP. Is he's going to have a lot of good running stats, and he's a very good thrower. I think whenever he has time and with those receivers that he's got, I think he'll be able to flourish in that offense. And Jonathan Taylor not missing the very beginning part of the year, I think they'll have a really good start to the year. I think he'll be in the running all year long, and I really think that they could win possibly 11 or 12 games. I think I had him more at like 10 or 11, but if they win like 11 or 12, I really think he could win that. And then just the fact that he's just an athletic freak. And as far as the NFL goes, like they just are drawn. You're just anybody. I mean, I understand it. I mean, you're just drawn to that. If they see him breaking some runs off for like 60, 70 yards, I mean, I think he's a shoo-in for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go foul on this one, and it's nothing against your take or Anthony Richardson. I think my eyes just need to see more before I'd place the bet. Last year he played 4 games. His completions percentage wasn't very good. Touchdown interception ratio, he only threw 3 touchdowns, only threw 1 pick, which was something that people thought he was going to do a lot of. But if everything hits perfectly and he takes off like he could, I 100% agree that we could be talking about Anthony Richardson for MVP. I've only seen him really play about 3 full games based on what he played last year going out in certain games. And I just think Lamar is probably better than him if we're going to talk like running quarterback. So I think that Lamar will still have that edge on a rushing side because I do think they'll try to limit how much stat wise Anthony Richardson runs. Um, Other than that, though, I see the talent, I see everything else. And really, if he stays healthy for 17 games and just improves a little bit passing, you're probably going to make me look really dumb on this.
Just one sec, Micah. The only thing that I see as regarding the Lamar Jackson status is once they get a couple MVPs, I feel like everybody wants to vote the other way. So if they are, and Lamar is just a tad bit ahead, I think they'll give it to him just because they tend to not want to go back to back or give a guy 3 MVPs within a recency.
100%.
I'm gonna go fair on this one. I think if he stays healthy, he's just last year he was ridiculous when he was healthy, but he really has to limit those big hits. I think they've been working really hard on that with him in the off season and in his recovery, and he's just gonna have to play a lot smarter when it comes to that situation. But I think they've been pushing it and working hard on it, so I think he does play pretty much a full season this year, hopefully, and if he's running the ball like he did last year and throwing the ball as well as he's shown at times last year, I think he has a really good chance of being up there for MVP conversation. So I'm going to go fair.
I also just remembered that tattoo that I saw that he put on today, so I should probably go fair. I should probably go fair.
Yeah, that should change your answer right there.
That thing was sick. That's actually crazy. Going under for 7 hours just to get a tattoo.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Weren't you
All
under
right,
for
Mike.
7 for your little tattoo?
Oh yeah, dude. I was out for 3 days.
It's like one line and then another line.
3 days.
I think he drew it on there with a marker.
That must have been one really good marker.
All right, my
All right,
next one is
last
my next one's CJ Stroud. I just think last year he played insane. I think people will game plan a little different against him this year after seeing a little bit of film, but it's going to be a whole different animal with Stephon Diggs there. I mean, you were already up there in conversation last year, already had an insane year, and then you gain a top 10 wide receiver. Yeah, he's a little older contract, which I think is a plus. The 1 year he's gonna want to go out there and perform and to get paid next year. My only issue with that too, though, is he's kind of a diva. He's going to demand the ball, and so with Stroud last year, it was I'm going to go wherever, whenever, and hopefully Diggs doesn't take away from that because last year he was able to spread the ball around and give all of his wide receivers a little bit of love. So hopefully Diggs comes in and just allows that to still happen because they have so many weapons in that wide receiver room. I mean, Noah Brown, even when he got chances last year, balled out. I mean, CJ made everybody look good last year. And so hopefully he just has that kind of year again. And I think he would definitely be up there in the conversation. And for plus 1,000, I like those odds.
Yeah, I'm gonna go fair. I think that's CJ Stroud showed last year. He was in the conversation all year, and then like he just missed it. Really, I think his team was not good enough. I think Stroud's already pushing back on that diva thing because he had an interview the other day where they asked him about Nico being wide receiver one. He's like, I got 5 wide receiver ones. So I think he's just already putting an idea in the wide receivers' heads like, you might be wide receiver one this week, you might not next week. You just got to roll with the punches. But I really like Stroud. I like the addition of Stephon Diggs. I probably would disagree with the top 10 wide receiver, but that's just me. And then other than that, though, I just don't know if they win enough games. We did our division breakdown, and I think we had them at 10. They have a really hard schedule. That's probably my biggest issue with Stroud. But other than that, I think that what you were talking about with game playing, it's going to be hard to game plan because Diggs is going to be a whole new part of that offense that'll be super different. So I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with fair as well. I really like CJ Stroud, and honestly, I think one of those two QBs in that division is gonna have a good shot at the MVP award. I mean, I think it's gonna literally come down to who wins that division. Um, so if, like you said, if they win enough games and they come out, with the AFC South title, I think CJ Stroud will probably have it because he's probably going to be airing the ball out a lot with those 3 wide receivers. And then the Dallas tight end, I mean, I think he's a little overlooked sometimes, but I think, having a solid tight end also helps. But they've got weapons galore. They picked up Joe Mixon and running back wise to go with Damian Pierce. He kind of has been struggling, but I think their running backs will be pretty solid this year too. I think, you know, offensively they'll be good. And defensively they'll be pretty good too. I think it's just going to be a battle for that division.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about running backs. Joe Mixon's definitely an upgrade over Devin Singletary, so I like that. That is it for the MVP discussion as far as our game goes. Now we're going to make our actual predictions. So those were just kind of bets that we liked going. going into it, but my prediction is going to be Josh Allen. Like I talked about with the narrative based thing, I think if the Bills do anything with what the roster that they have and the conversations that were going on this offseason, I really think that they'll do anything they can to hand Josh Allen that award. If he's playing well, like they're not just going to hand it to him for no reason. But if he goes for 4,000 yards this year, they'll be like, oh, look what Josh Allen did with basically nothing around him. So that would be my prediction. It's plus 800 on FanDuel. I'm definitely not betting that, but that's what I would pick if I had to pick one.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
strong bet. I'm probably going to go Stroud off of Micah's last pick of the game, but I like him just because his odds are right at 1,000. So like you can easily put just a little bit of money on that and win some good money. And I don't know. I just think he's been kind of a talk of the off season. Him being on that podcast quite a bit, having some opinions. You know, when you kind of get into the media a little bit more, and then you back that up with another really good season, and if they win the title, I think he'll just have a really good shot at it. So I think the odds kind of entice me with him.
I'm gonna have to go full on Homer here and go, go with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he. I mean, how do you bet against the guy? It's just been insanely good, and they just gave him more and more weapons this offseason. So it's going to be hard for him not to have just an absolute boom of a year. And so I'm just gonna go with my Chiefs fan there.
I agree with you. I'll probably sprinkle some money on that too.
Yeah, like you said, with the pieces they added, statistically, if he shoots up again, and I do think Mahomes is super petty in a very good way. And like he'll listen to everyone and be like, "Oh, Mahomes had a down year and they won the Super Bowl," and Mahomes will be like, "I didn't have a down year. I'm gonna show them." So I do like the Mahomes prediction. I don't like betting odds that low for one person just because it's just so frantic, But if you want it, go get it. So we're gonna move on to Defensive Player of the Year. It's probably going to be a little lighter discussion because it's kind of hard to have. You have to have a lot of defensive statistics and stuff that no one understands. But right now, if I had to pick a Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go T.J. Watt. He has the third best odds behind Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. I just am not going to go Myles Garrett for the back to back. I think Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in football. But like Hayden said, with the awards and the way they go, they usually don't give the back to backs unless you do something even above what you did the year before. And Myles Garrett is going to have a hard time doing better than what he did last year. And then Micah Parsons, I just think there's going to be some consistency issues with the Dallas defense in general. So I don't really see him being in the same tier that he has been in the last couple of years, or at least the Dallas defense. And I think that the award takes into account a lot how good your defense is as a whole, even if it's shown.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Go ahead, Micah. You go next.
I went ahead and went with Micah Parsons mostly because he has a awesome first name. Uh, but he's just a absolute beast. I mean, dude can move for his size, and just yeah, their defense is going to be a little down this year, but I think he's going to absolutely just stand out, even with that defense being a little bit down, and I think it's just going to kind of shine what he does, and I just like the odds there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I just
Um,
told you
I,
I disagree with that, so I'll let
yeah,
him just go.
I like it. I think Micah Parsons is going to be playing really hard this year because I don't think that Jerry Jones is going to pay him. So I think he's going to be a little motivated there. So I think that might help you out on that pick, Micah. But I'm going to go with Will Anderson. I think
Spicy.
he's sneaky with those odds, and he's got really good odds, honestly. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I think him paired with Daniil Hunter, and Daniil Hunter's a little older, but he had a heck of a season last year for the Vikings, who really didn't have that great of a defense. So you pair those two guys together, and Will Anderson had 8 sacks last year. So I think that, if he gets up, I think he could easily be somewhere near that 15 range. And then if he has a whole bunch of other stats to go with it, and then, D'Amico Ryans is going to have that defense humming. I mean, they were doing pretty good last year and I think they added some good pieces. So I think Will Anderson's got a good shot.
Yeah, that's actually a great bet. Right now on FanDuel, I'm seeing plus 2,600. He got double teamed a ton last year. They showed double team percentages. He was one of the highest in the league. And like you're talking about with Neil Hunter, that'll take a lot of that away because you can't be that consistent when you're double teaming one guy when you have two guys that are that good. So it'll be interesting. He'll get a lot of different matchups and stuff. And D'Amico Ryans is a genius, man. So I love that bet. I love that pick. Everything about it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about the odds. Just having 2,600 for somebody who's going to just probably improve with having less light shown on him with other defenders there. Just is going to make him look better this year too.
All right, we'll move on to offensive rookie of the year here. I'll go ahead and close this one out. Let's let Hayden, you go ahead and start us off with your reasoning.
So I'm gonna go with Jaden Daniels just because I like the odds there. I think you can get a little bit more for your money at plus 600. I think he's got a good shot. He's crazy athletic. You've heard all the good things in the offseason. You've seen his or his tape from LSU. He throws a really good ball. I think the Commanders could be sneaky good. They're probably not going to be a playoff team, but they're to that point where he's putting up stats week in and week out, and they may be losing games, but he's going to be in that running for offensive rookie of the year because a lot of times for that, I mean, it does. Your team usually can't just be the worst team in the NFL, which if you are, you're not probably putting up a lot of stats. But a lot of times they don't make the playoffs even for those awards. So I could see them winning like 7, 8 games and him just being in offensive shootouts, throwing for I could see him throwing for 300 plus several times and running for 50 plus in those games.
Yeah, Micah, go ahead.
Um, yeah, I just think it's going to be hard when Caleb Williams just has got so many weapons there in Chicago. I think he's the easy money, but I mean, FanDuel has dropped it down since we looked last. I mean, I thought it was 170, but they've dropped it down to 140 even. So you're not getting quite as much there. If I would actually probably lean more Marvin Harrison just because you're still getting a good amount. But I mean, it's hard to go anywhere else other than Caleb, in my opinion. But if I was going to just pivot from Caleb, I'd probably go Marvin Harrison. I mean, he's got Kyler Murray throwing to him this year. Just going to be just he's just an amazing talent, and I mean, when he gets selected in the first round as a wide receiver, you're expected a lot, and hopefully we'll see that this year.
Yeah, I'm with you on these Caleb odds. This is going to be minus money before the beginning of the year. Caleb will be favored against the whole thing, would be my thought process. I just don't see. I think Jaden Daniels is by far the second best bet, absolutely. And Marvin Harrison is the third best. Then there's all these bets on FanDuel, and I just think they're irrelevant. Maybe you can go Bo Nix because he's going to start right off the bat, but the rest of these guys aren't going to start. So you have to beat out a starting quarterback that, as a receiver, like Puka Nacua last year was phenomenal, and it just didn't matter because CJ Stroud was pretty good. Like Puka Nacua compared to receivers was better than CJ Stroud was to QBs. It didn't matter. Stroud plays quarterback. They like giving the award to quarterbacks. So I do think Bo Nix is the only one on this list that's like going to start outside of those top two for sure because they really don't have anybody else, at least off the bat. So if you want to like sprinkle a huge underdog, that's where I would go. But I think Caleb Williams is free money here. I don't see how, with the roster he has around him and the storylines around Caleb Williams, he would really have to be pretty bad this year to not win that award. I think they're going to, he's got an easy inside track to winning.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with both of you. I honestly was going to take Caleb Williams, but I didn't want to do the same as all of y'all. And I thought Jaden Daniels. Honestly, I think he's got a shot. I don't think he'll win it just because of what you said. There's a lot of narratives around Caleb and with those weapons. But if anybody could maybe steal the show, I think it's him because, like he said, it's very hard for receivers unless it's just a bad QB class coming in or none of them play. Just because, like you said, Puka Nacua pretty much did about all you could. I mean, he would have had a hell of a case for just player of the year. I mean, as far as his stats went, and he didn't win it.
Yeah, now we're going to move on to defensive rookie of the year. Me and Micah both had Caleb, Hayden had Jaden Daniels. Don't know if I made that exactly clear, but now it is. Defensive rookie of the year. I think these are pretty interesting. Uh, Hayden, you got a kind of crazy one. I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, I just thought, I I don't really research enough on the defensive rookie side of this thing, but I did think I liked the odds there, and I like the pairing with the new head coach, former defensive coordinator for the Cowboys there in Washington. I think, if he's going to I think he could make Washington's defense just, ball out. I know they've traded away a piece to the Bears, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're sneaky good on the defensive side this year to help make up for some rookies on the offensive side. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he sneaks in there.
Yeah, Hayden, a sneaky Commanders fan over here, but going Daniels and Johnny Newton or Jerzon Newton, depending on which place you look up. For I am a draft nerd, a huge one, and Johnny Newton's a stud, man. Like I really do like that pick, especially getting that plus 3,500 odds. You're getting pretty far down there, and that Washington defense doesn't have a lot. That would actually be my concern. Is I think he's going to eat a lot of double teams in the middle there. So I don't know if he'll statistically be there, but I do think he's a great player, and with those odds, I'd take the dart throw for sure. Micah, who did you have going in there as defensive rookie of the year?
Uh, Jared Verse, is that how you say his last name?
I
Yep.
believe so.
Uh, Jared Verse, it's plus 1,200. He's got some big shoes to fill there for the Rams in Aaron Donald being gone, but clearly they thought he was someone to fill those shoes, or else they probably wouldn't have drafted him. So I think that he's already in a good defense, and so I think he's just got a good odds this year of stepping into some big shoes. And
Yeah, I like Jared Verse a lot. They also brought in Braden Fisk too, so two unproven D linemen that could make some noise. I think Braden Fisk is going to eat a lot of blocks too. Jared Verse should have a lot of one-on-ones outside there at the defensive end spot. Super super powerful. Going to be interesting to see how he translates because he won a lot with power, and sometimes it takes a year or two to figure that out. But really good pass rushing moves, which kind of speaks into who I picked. I went Leatu Latu for the Colts. Super low, like not great odds when you're talking from a bet perspective. He's second favorite behind Dallas Turner there in Minnesota. But man, dude, his pass rushing moves are crazy. By far the most polished pass rusher coming in. So I'm just, even getting the second best odds, I'm going to take the guy that I know has talent at what he's doing. Very good footwork, very polished. Just everything he does is super professional already. And he had that 2 year drought from playing in college with that neck injury. So I think he's pretty motivated to come back and show everyone that pass on him, like, hey, I'm ready to go. Don't sleep on me. All of that kind of stuff. So I love that. And I also put Quinyon Mitchell for the Eagles. I think he was the best defensive player in the draft at his position. It's just harder for corners to win it than it is for pass rushers. But I think Quinyon Mitchell's a stud, has a knack for the ball. So if he's at 6 picks or something like that, he might get a look for the award too. All right. Next up, we have our Super Bowl bets. So moving on from the player side to the team side. Our last podcast, for anyone that listened, went way too long, so we didn't get to fit the Super Bowl stuff in it. But this one, we saved some time to get into it. So, the best Super Bowl bet that I have, we each have two or three here. We each got three. So I'll go first. I got the Rams. We've talked a lot about the Rams in the last two episodes, but like we talked about with Stafford, and then we just talked about their defensive rookies that they have that I really like. I just think that they have winning pedigree when you get there too. So I think getting to the playoffs is the easy part for a lot of teams. I think that's the hardest part for the Rams, honestly. But once they get there, they know how to win games. And this year they ran into the Lions at home playing against Stafford. I think that was just a little too much energy to overcome, but a little bit more of a favorable schedule, and I think that they get pretty dangerous come playoff time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I really like the Rams. The Rams bet. Those odds are just super enticing, especially as far as they got, and to just be like a few plays away from going on to play for the NFC Championship there. I think those are really good odds to take.
Um, I'll go with my first one. I have the Jets. They're plus 2,400. Um, I mean, my thing is, last year they won 7 games without a quarterback. I mean, they only scored 18 touchdowns all last season, and now they're going to gain a Hall of Fame quarterback back. And hopefully Rodgers can just stay healthy this year, and I think it's going to be a hard team to beat. I think it'd be a cool narrative for Rodgers to win one more before he retires too. I just think their defense is so good, and that's the main reason I even have.
Yeah, just to give a little insight, the Rams odds were plus 3,200, and the Jets odds are plus 2,400. Just for that little betting insight on the back end of that. Hayden, go ahead with your next team.
Yeah, I am going to go with the Lions as far as a good team to put a decent amount of money on. I mean, they're at plus 1,300. I think they were so close. They had it, and then they just kind of let off the gas a little bit. I think it was something to do with being new to new to that position that they were in. Obviously they hadn't made a playoffs in forever, and then Dan Campbell is a fairly new head coach. Jared Goff has been told, can't do this. I think they're just going to have a lot to build on. They're going to have a lot of that fire to go in there and make it happen next year. So I really think they have a good chance of getting to the Super Bowl, and possibly winning it. They've got a really good team, really good offensive line. Their offense is honestly pretty stacked. And defensively, I think they'll be better. I think they drafted some of the areas on defense that they were weak at. So I think as long as they can fix that a little bit,
Yeah, we all got the same second team, so I'll just skip that one. I'll move on to my third team. I'm going to go with the Packers plus 1,900. Kind of talked about this when we were talking about Jordan Love, but I think their main issues last year were, like you talked about with Jacobs, when they really needed to get physical. They didn't have the ability to run the clock out like that. And I think Jacobs brings that dynamic. And then defensively, they drafted a little better and got a couple guards inside of O linemen. So I think they bolstered the interior of that offensive line. Both of my bets are in the NFC, which I think is key to me outside of that third team. But to go through the AFC, you got to beat one team, and everyone knows who the one team is. And I think there's like a little bit of a mental side of it to a lot of those AFC teams. So the AFC bets that I don't mind are the Jets and the Texans. You talked about the Jets, but neither of them have experienced that Mahomes just heartbreaking moment. So I do think that those two have a little bit different outlook there. But I'm just going to stick to the NFC. I think that's where you can really make the money because I don't really view any of those teams in a higher light. I mean, maybe San Francisco, but that would be it. So I like the NFC odds, like the Packers there at plus 1,900.
I also had the Packers. Um, I just think they're going to be really good this year. Like you said, the offensive line's better. And I just like Jordan Love a lot this year. I think he's going to play outstanding. And my only issue with them is they're just young and inexperienced, and playoffs is a lot of pressure for them as a young team. And so that's my biggest downfall with the Packers this year.
Yeah, my second team. I think the Texans have a good shot. Like you said, they got to get past the Chiefs, and I honestly don't think that'll happen. But I would say I'd give them the best odds to do it, just because they haven't faced playoff Mahomes yet. I think everybody who has kind of knows, and I don't know that that necessarily helps them that they know what they're dealing with there. It's kind of like, boy, I don't want to see that again type deal. And with CJ Stroud kind of being young and, you know, and with that offense, I think he's just kind of one of those things where they may not know what they're getting themselves into, but they end up going in, maybe even going into Arrowhead and having some sort of upset. I don't foresee that, but I would give them the best shot out of the AFC, and especially with plus 1,600 odds.
Yeah, so our third team that we all have is the Panthers. We all love the Panthers. Oh, is the Chiefs. I feel like, it's hard for me to put money down on the Chiefs odds. It's plus 600. That's just like when you're talking about a whole season and then the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl. I just don't like putting bets on odds that low. But if I'm doing it for anybody, it's the guys that keep doing it. So Mahomes is Mahomes, Andy Reid is Andy Reid, and as long as those two are there, like if we're making predictions, I'm going to pick them. But as far as betting goes, it's just really tough at that number.
I will say with them betting wise, and they usually do have a spurt like this, they'll get into a little bit of a funk. That's when you'd want to put some money down because their odds will drop. If they start out the year like maybe 2-2, or maybe those first two games being super hard, you might catch those odds getting to where you want to throw money at
Yeah, maybe Vegas will finally smarten up and not do that this year, but they usually react a little bit and the money will come in one way. So definitely pay attention to that. Micah, any other huge like new thoughts on the Kansas City Chiefs? I know they're pretty unknown around these parts, but
Yeah, I
any
mean,
insight?
it's just they're going to be a fun. I'm excited for the season to start. I mean, I'm excited to see our receiver room this year. I mean, last year it was atrocious, and we still pulled it out. And so I'm just excited to see what Pat can do again with some solid wide receivers and lots of speed back.
It's been a while since we've seen some bombs that Pat's been throwing. I feel like the last couple of years it's been just methodical drives and maybe a 20-yard touchdown here or there, but
Yeah,
might be able to see some bombs this year to Worthy.
I think it's going to be just exciting. I mean, like it's going to be nice because he's gotten to the point where he's comfortable. If we need to just go in and just make a long drive and make it last, but then you got to be ready because at any moment it's just gonna he can launch it, and so uh, I'm just excited.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty, unknown what our Chiefs predict or what our Super Bowl predictions are going to be on the AFC side. All of us are probably going to go a lot of different directions, but we'll go ahead and give our actual Super Bowl predictions. So this is not betting wise. This is just who we actually think is going to make it. So I'm going to go Chiefs versus Rams. So I know that that's kind of a little bit of an upset. Rams have a little lower odds. Like I said, I just really think that the Rams, this is their year to put it all together. Stafford getting older, McVay kind of, hinting at that retirement talk. I think that they're really going to be all in this year to maybe make it a last go at the sunset for Stafford. I think McVay just kind of talks to get more money, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chiefs Lions. I think that that's the matchup we should have had this year, and I think we're gonna get it. Um, I think the Lions are a really good team, and it's very hard to bet against the Chiefs not making it back there. I mean, what is it? What are they? 5 for 6 in the last 6 years of being there. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
hard. It's hard not to go with them being there.
I've got the Chiefs and Packers. Um, like I said, I just like the Packers a lot this year, and clearly I like the Chiefs. And so it's just always hard
Couldn't
to
tell
bet
by your
against the
shirt.
Chiefs. Yeah,
Yeah.
always hard
It
to
took
bet
me
against the Chiefs.
it took me 51 minutes in the podcast to notice that you were wearing a Chiefs shirt, but yeah. But yeah, so Chiefs, Packers, Chiefs, Lions, and Chiefs and Rams. So none of us took the favorites on the NFC side. I think that kind of tells a little bit of a story in the commonality of like no one took the same team in the NFC. I think the NFC is super unknown. I think if you asked, the popular vote, a lot of people would be on San Francisco. Um, but I'm not going to pick San Francisco. I'm gonna be a little out there. So that's more fun. And I don't like Brock Purdy. So by the time we get done with this podcast, I'm going to look really dumb if I pick the 49ers and everything I end up saying about Brock Purdy.
It's just hard for me to see Christian McCaffrey having another full season. and
Yeah.
so that could be a damper on him. But I could be wrong.
They're like two injuries away from just having a rough year. Like I mean, like
They're
if Trent
they're
Williams were to go
one.
down, I don't know if I don't know if they'd have a good year. I mean, Brock's not exactly mobile.
I mean, they struggled last year with Debo out. I mean, they're one injury away from being in
Yeah.
trouble. So
Yeah, Debo and CMC are just so crucial to the offense. They run plays specifically where like they can't run them if Debo's out, they can't run them if CMC's out. So, all right,
Yeah.
that's a tangent for another day. But I think that's the end of the podcast, boys. Great episode. We'll try to do another one next week. It might be a little hectic, but we'll see if we can get it done. That's it for this one. Go ahead and do your sign offs, boys. Hopefully you rehearsed them a
I don't
little bit
I
this
don't have
week.
I don't have one. See you, fellas.
Okay.
Peace out.
Adios.